Complaining. Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for being here. Got an interesting show tonight. As most of you know, I'm packing up, heading off to an expedition with the Olympic Project. Very excited about that. I'm going to try and bring back some video for you guys. I'm definitely going to bring back some audio, some interviews for you guys. So look for that on Sunday. I should be back Saturday night, so I'll plug it in, and should have a great show for you on Sunday. So look forward to that. But tonight I'll be speaking with Jeff, and Jeff had an encounter when he was a young man. Didn't really talk about it publicly. Told close family and friends, but it's a very interesting encounter. And I think probably people on the East Coast don't think about this, but on the West Coast I hear New Jersey, and I think of New York. I hope I said that right, New York. Anyway, you think of Jersey, you think of big cities, you think of, but there's a lot of forests out there. And Jeff talks about an encounter he had, over 30 years ago, of seeing this thing cross the road. I'll also be bringing Shane Corson on the show. Shane is the host of Monster X. I'm going to have him share his encounter with us. He's also going to be talking about some nesting areas that they found. Kind of a fascinating conversation, actually. The Olympic Project came across these nesting areas, and when you look at them, the only thing you can really compare it to is something like a gorilla would do, except for this is here in Washington State. So it's very interesting. Shane will go into some of that tonight. So it should be a great show. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. Let's jump right into it tonight. Jeff, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here tonight.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was interested in your encounter that happened to you, but for the audience, I guess kind of start from the beginning. If you would, kind of tell them what you were out doing and what happened.
Well, it was a long time ago. I was about 14 when it happened. I was just a kid, riding my bike around the area where I lived. It was just down the street, I guess about a half a mile down the street from my house. I was coming from, there's a farmhouse behind us I used to play with a lot of the kids back there. And, ride my bike back there, almost every day. And one day, when I was coming back from the farm, I was riding down a hill up to my house, and I noticed something go across the street. It scared the heck out of me, I tell you. It was so fast, it was almost as if I wasn't sure if I saw what I saw. And it literally crossed the street within literally 2 steps, and I got to tell you, it scared the crap out of me. Seeing something, something you've never seen before. I've seen bears before, and this was nothing like a bear. Or, it was big, it was wide, and all I saw was just in 2 steps, it went across the street and right into the woods. And what was the scariest part about it was I had to pass where he went across the street in order to get home. So. Which was, I think at that moment I was in shock. I still processing in my mind what I saw. So it crossed the street. All I could do was just bike harder and harder. I mean, I never think I've never rode my bike harder up a hill ever in my life. I mean, my adrenaline was just flying. It was a scary, scary moment. And
all of a sudden you turn into an Olympic athlete.
I turned into an Olympic athlete. Matter of fact, the next day or so, I tried to do what I did because I was so impressed by how I was able to bike the way I did. I tried to do it again, and I couldn't. I didn't have the adrenaline like I did after getting scared the wits out of me. So it was funny that, I whatever power came in me, I couldn't do it again.
Yeah.
But of course there was another Sasquatch that walked across the street again, but it was quite scary.
Yeah, that is scary, especially for a kid. It's like I was telling you, I talked to a kid here in Washington State, and he's 15. He hasn't even told his parents yet what happened. He's just been kind of looking into this on his own. And he was riding his bike, and he was like, Wes, I'm telling you, he goes, it wasn't a bear, it wasn't a man. And in like 2 steps, this thing went across this road and it was gone. And I know the area he's talking about. It's pretty well known for Sasquatch sightings. But how big would you say the creature was?
I got to say it was. I mean, I was a small kid at the time. I think this thing was just enormous. I got to say it was at least 8 feet, maybe bigger. I just remember how just wide it was, and just everything was just enormous on it. But again, it was so quick, it's so fast. I literally thought my mind was playing tricks on me, and I don't know what I saw. I just know it was nothing that existed in the wild. You know, and I don't know if it was so long ago. I don't remember if it was before the time I was hearing about the sightings or after or during. But you know, around that time there was sightings going on. I remember even at that time there were some sightings that were posted in the paper, local paper, and I've been trying to find the article, but I haven't been able to find it. But I remember, I think my mother was telling me too about it too, that you know that it went into a chicken coop, you know, was killing some chickens, and I remember that she was telling me that there was a Doberman, that it threw a Doberman, killed a Doberman. That's, you know, that again, it's so long ago. You're talking about 32 years ago now. But, you know, as a kid, you don't write these things down, or you don't, you know, you just sit in awe and just kind of remember them and recollect from it. But, you know, as you get older and years pass by, and, you know, now as the stories come out and you start to see more on the internet, and, you know, of course we didn't have internet back then. Everything we relied on was by books and all. You know, but through the years, you know, I got to see the Patterson video, and man, it just, you know, seeing the way it walked, it reminded me exactly what that flash moment that I saw, how it walked. You know, when it was walking across the street. You know, it wasn't a walk; it was literally like a sprint, or I don't know what it was, but man, it had such a long gait that, you know, it could cross the street in such a quick, you know, 2-step stroke, and it was literally in the woods. You know, there was a cornfield that, you know, there was on one side of the street where it was walking into, there was, you know, big trees. On the other side of that, it was like a row of trees, and then after that there was a cornfield. So it basically just, you know, went past the trees and right into the cornfield. You know, I can remember hearing as I was passing by, there was some breaking of corn stalks, but that's about it.
Did you tell anyone about what you saw?
Yeah, at the time, I think I might have told my mother, and I don't think it didn't come out till days later, because I just don't know what I saw. It was just, you know, it was so difficult to process from what I saw. I literally thought I was imagining it, but as time went on, it seemed to like just stick in my mind. I couldn't pass it off as something as imaginary. You know, it just didn't feel right. There was something there. I was completely shocked, and it's ever since it's stuck with me for all these years. But, you know, it's not like I was the only one who had the only experience. You know, my mother remembers a time when me and my brother coming home from the swim club, not too far from home, and it was a hot summer day, and I remember, I can't remember the smell or anything. I guess I was just too young, but my mother remembers it distinctly. You know, a horrible, horrible smell that was coming from the woods, and there was some kind of noise, a loud noise that something was making in the woods. You know, my brother heard it. My mother definitely remembers it. You know, I vaguely remember the time. It definitely, we all had our experience with it.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was a small town. I lived in Oxford, New Jersey. You know, it's up North Jersey there, and it's quite a wooded area. And that was where sightings were seen. I believe it might have been the Hackettstown paper. It might have been in, I don't remember offhand, but there were several sightings that were posted at the time, or in an article. that happened, and so I wasn't the only one.
Yeah, no, and you're never the only one. It's interesting. And I understand the way you felt about it. It's like I was telling you, the kid I just talked to, he was saying that, he's 15 years old on his bike. And again, I know the location he's talking about in Washington State. It's very well known for sightings, but he went through this thing where he said for a couple of days, he just kind of sat there and thought, God, did I really see that? Was I imagining things? And then he finally came to the conclusion that, it freaked me out enough to pump my adrenaline through the roof. And
it gives me chills right now and goosebumps as I think about it. And, hearing that story as well, it just kind of gives me some reflection of, there's others that, felt the same thing as, for a while, I've questioned myself, but, what the heck was that? It's hard to process.
Yeah, it's very hard to process, and it's interesting because, it must have heard you coming. I mean, I realize you were 100 yards away, or from what we talked earlier, but it had to have heard you coming, and it makes you wonder why they do that. A lot of these roadside crossings with cars, I've been out in the woods. You can hear a car coming 2 miles away, 3 miles away. You can hear them coming, and it's just kind of weird behavior for them to do that. Why not wait till you pass and then go across the road? Do you know what I mean?
Well, on the other side of the road, it wasn't like there's any wooded area. That actually was an open field area. Right in that area, there's a water treatment plant area, and there's no house or anything in that area. My house wasn't till maybe 1,000 yards or more past where he crossed the street, but there's also a divider of trees, and then there's one house, and then another house that was mine. And so it was an open area. So it wasn't like there was any area for him to, as far as what I think, that he could have hidden. So he could have been crossing the brush there, and just wanted to get into, I guess, a more secrete area, and which was the area across, which was into the field where the corn stalks and all were. So I don't know. I don't know if he saw me or not. I don't remember seeing a face. I mean, it seemed like it was just this rush across the street, and it was more of a profile look, just him facing forward and crossing right in past the trees and into the cornfield.
Was there anything else that threw you off beyond its size?
The arms, I do remember they were just extremely thick, very beefy, wide arms, and just very wide, and they were long. They were much past his waist, or even down to I want to say where the bend of his knees would be. It seemed like it just seemed like these big trunks. Again, it's such a short moment of time that I think you get tunnel vision. I think at that moment, so you see this thing cross past you, and I don't even think, as I remember, I don't even believe I looked right when I passed him. My eyes were so focused towards the road to get back home that nothing else was in my mind, literally. Yeah. So,
And then it happened so fast, too. Everything happened so fast, it's hard to...
Yeah, it really did. Now, that wasn't my only moment that I had with it. As far as, I did, as I said, saw some, I don't know if it was one or two, it was at least one footprint by the bridge. Actually, the bridge I had to pass to get past the sighting. There's a small bridge at the bottom of the hill, and it wasn't very, I don't know if it came after maybe some rain or whatnot, but there was some mud up on the bridge with some light dirt, sand. There was an impression there that I did see, and I don't remember if it was before or after. It might have been after, because that was probably when I started looking around. I remember at that time, I as a kid, I was like, I wanted to find out more. I remember going back in the woods, geared up as a kid. I wanted to make even a casting, see if I could find anything, in the mud or something, of some footprints. But I never got to see anything that was real distinctive, like what I saw at the bridge.
Now, when did you find those prints? Was it you said it was afterwards?
I'm thinking it was after. Again, as a kid, you don't take any note of any of this stuff, so it's all just one big, memory. And I believe it was after that I went down there.
What was unique about the prints?
It was big. It was big. I remember putting my foot in it, and it just completely surrounded my entire foot. And I had my shoe on. It just completely surrounded my, entire foot. Being, I don't know how big my foot was at 13, but but it was significantly bigger, several inches, maybe 4 or 5 inches bigger, and maybe a couple inches or more wider than my shoe when I put my foot in the middle of it. And I wish, I had a picture. We didn't have cell phones back then with where you could take a picture or something, but everything was filmed back then. It wasn't easy to take pictures as a kid as it is now.
Kind of a weird spot to be barefoot too, I would imagine.
Yeah. It was distinctive too. I could see the toes distinctively, each toe. And it got very wide at the end, more narrow towards the heel of the foot. But overall, it was just a massive print that was in the mud there. That was basically my experience at the time. I've lived with it, all the time. Never told anybody about it. As far as any publicly, you're literally the first show I've ever come forward. Actually found me because I was actually just, time to time I go online and I, look up, sightings and see what's going on, what's the latest news on any Sasquatch sightings or Bigfoot sightings. And
I'm just glad that you were able to come on and share the experience, man. I really do appreciate it.
Well, I got to tell you, for so long, I hear all the sightings, everyone come forward. Here I'm one that I think was a pretty significant sighting, but I never came forward about it. I just always, for whatever reason, never pursued, contacting anyone about it. Or, as I said, the most I've ever told was, some close friends and family. But that's really as far as it ever went. I haven't really told many people about it. So it was a nice opportunity to get to, speak to somebody, that's researching it and, finally get some of this stuff out of my head and just kind of talk about it, which is, nice to do.
Well, I'm glad you did. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah. I appreciate you having me and wanting to hear my story.
Thanks, Jeff. I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming on. I want to welcome Shane Corson to the show. Shane is one of the co-hosts of Monster X. He's also a member of the Olympic Project and a dear friend of mine. I always enjoy talking with Shane. Him and I share a lot of ideas off the air. And, I like to throw a lot of things off Shane, just, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And Shane always gives me his honest opinion on, I think that's crap, or, there might be something to that. And so I really value his opinion. Shane, thanks so much for coming on the show, man.
Well, thanks for that introduction, Wes. I really appreciate it. And the feeling's mutual, man. I love bouncing stuff off of you as well. And it's a real pleasure to join you here on Sasquatch Chronicles.
Yeah, man, I'm glad that you're here, and I'm really looking forward to the expedition this weekend. I know the Olympic Project, they do these expeditions from time to time, and everyone I've talked to that's ever gone on one, I personally have never been to one, but I know a lot of people that have gone to them said, man, you have to go up with Shane, Derek, the whole Olympic Project group. These guys really know what they're doing, and you walk away with, not only knowledge on the subject, but the scientific method of it. And I give a lot of Bigfoot researchers, and Shane knows this, I give a lot of Bigfoot researchers crap because I think they preach a lot of things, but at the end of the day, I think half of them don't have any clue what they're talking about. With the Olympic Project and with Shane and Derek, I know these guys really know what they're talking about. Shane said, hey, this is just different stuff we've talked about in the past where, he's kind of said to me, well, this is kind of how you scientifically would go about this. And, you've been right on with a lot of things, Shane. So I'm really looking forward to it. I respect everyone at the Olympic Project. I respect what they do. And while we don't get answers as quickly as we'd like in this field, it's kind of a slow and steady race, isn't it?
Oh man, I couldn't agree with you more. And thanks for the build up with the Olympic Project. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, man. And that's the thing that I think a lot of researchers and enthusiasts lack is patience. We all would like, many of us would like the answers right away. We would like to know more about our findings, and we'd like to, find, what we're looking for, Sasquatch. I mean, on a regular basis and stuff. And unfortunately, it's just not the name of the game. It takes patience, perseverance, a lot of time. It takes money. People hate that word money, but I can tell you this year alone, just on equipment, just this year alone so far, I'm up there in the thousands. And but
oh yeah,
but it's what I enjoy doing. It's a passion, and for the Olympic Project, we're a bunch of like-minded individuals with the same passion, goals, and agendas, and and we have patience. Many of the members of the Olympic Project have been at this longer than I have, and I've been at it for quite a while now. But many of them have been at it far past my time in the field or even interest. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that. Though there are a lot of valuable researchers and groups out there that I respect and that, the Olympic Project and myself, we collaborate with, that I believe are going about things the right way. It's tedious and time-consuming. In the end, I know we are, as I'm speaking for the Olympic Project, we're going things about the right way and collecting huge amounts, volumes of data and pieces of evidence, and really trying to get down to the nitty-gritty wherever that leads us.
And it's one of those things to where, this subject consumes people, especially after they have encounters. I mean, I became consumed with it, almost addicted to it. And, all the witnesses I have on the show, I can see the same thing. Once you've had an encounter, you really become consumed with trying to find answers. What is this saying? On and on, all down the list, a million questions that you want answered. But if you would, Shane, would you mind telling the audience your encounter? Tell them what you were doing and then just kind of walk them right into it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, let me just give you a little background. First of all, I was born in Scotland. I lived on a little island called Isla, and we moved to the States and moved back to Scotland and moved back to the States and ended up residing in San Diego, where I kind of grew up really enjoying cryptids in general. I was always fascinated by Sasquatch. When I lived in Scotland, Sasquatch over there, as many of your listeners are from around the world, they're interested in the Sasquatch subject, even though they can't get in the field or be here in the States, even though there are reports around the world of Sasquatch-like beings. But here in the United States, I was always fascinated with Sasquatch. And moving to San Diego, I started looking up reports down there, and there were reports down there. You got reports from the desert to the mountains, the Cuyamaca. For some of your listeners, they'll know what the Zuby is, a creature reported back in Alpine, down in San Diego County. And so I started researching that, and I did a lot of work in San Bernardino, and one of my favorite spots to travel to was in Yosemite. And when I'd go to Yosemite, it was a long drive for me, 10, 11, 12 hours to drive up there. But I'd love going up there and camping, but in the back of my head, I was always looking for evidence of Sasquatch and very interested in the subject, even San Bernardino County. I never really found anything of interest, never found anything of interest. I was fortunate in 2008 to move to Oregon. I got married, and my wife and we now reside here. And wow, I moved to Oregon. I was just blown away. The beauty, the huge amounts of forest, the freedom you have up here in the Pacific Northwest to do a lot of stuff, camping and hiking and fishing, just huge amounts of freedom up here. And so I started really getting into the Sasquatch subject heavily up here. anyways, I met some friends up here. We're good friends. Don't really talk to them now, but back then, my encounter happened in 2011, and a couple of my buddies, Ian and Mitch, we love fishing, and we were trying to go fishing wherever we could. If I wasn't out researching or just looking, for pieces of evidence or just trying to find an area where I thought Sasquatch may be, I was fishing. And so a couple of my buddies and I decided to go on this kind of remote backpacking trip up near Mount Hood, in the Mount Hood National Forest. It was purely a fishing trip. I didn't take any equipment with me, not a recorder. We took our cameras because we wanted to get some scenic pictures. You're out camping and stuff. You like to take pictures. But anyways, we went up there, and we had an area in mind, and we get up to Mount Hood, and it's a high lake area with a bunch of lakes, and we went out there and set up our camp, did a little fishing. Really didn't have any luck fishing. We were in those lakes up there. You got you got cutthroat, and you got a lot of small trout and stuff in these lakes up there, and they're just fun to catch. And it takes a little bit of skill in some of these high lakes to catch these fish. So it was a trip where we were just a couple guys, going out, want to do some hiking and camping and get away from the crowds, people, and just have a good time and enjoy each other's company. For us, we set up camp and we cook a meal, did a little fishing, and, sat around the fire, just talking back and forth. And I think we called it a night. It was either, it was around 11 or 12, probably closer to 11. We had, we built our fire up and called it a night. The way we set up our campsite, we had a fire off to the side, and the three of our tents, we had all slept in separate tents, the three of us, and our tents were, spaced out a couple feet apart. And we had a little hill behind us, and then the lake, we were camping right next to the lake. So we're camping right next to the lake, we got a fire pit, and there's a little hill behind us, and a trail leading to some of the other lakes. And around 1:32 in the morning, I woke up because I heard some noise, and I'm listening, and it sounded like two rocks being clanked together, just being clanked together. And I thought, that's odd. What the heck is that? So I'm listening and listening and listening. And fortunately for me, my buddy was awake. My buddy Mitch was awake, and he kind of said, hey, what is that? What is that noise? I don't know. It sounds like, two rocks being kind of knocked together. We listened to that for a while, and then all of a sudden we started hearing, sticks breaking. It sounded something was moving around on this little knoll, this little hill. That I couldn't tell if it was stepping on them or breaking the trees, because it's a very thick pine forest in this area. And so I couldn't tell if something was stepping on the sticks or breaking with their hand. But it sounded like something was just walking around. And, we're whispering back and forth, what is this, and I'll be honest, in the back of my head, I'm going, I heard rock clanking, what I assumed was rock clanking. I didn't see what was doing it. And then I hear these bipedal footsteps step, what I think was stepping on stuff, and then maybe possibly breaking branches off. I didn't know. It was fairly close, but not extremely close. And then we got a couple of knocks, what I assume were wood knocks. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but these knocks were, they were pretty loud and fairly close. And I'm thinking, wow, what the frick? And I just, I'll be honest with you, here I call myself, I was trying to research the subject and all that, and I didn't feel like getting out of my tent, to be honest with you, I didn't. And it was pretty dang dark, and maybe I could have got out of my tent that night and flashed my flashlight around and maybe saw something, I don't know. But we were whispering back and forth, and to be honest with you, I was a little frightened. I was like, wow, this is legit, something unique's going on here. And I'm trying to rationalize it. My buddy and me are talking back and forth, elk, what's making that noise? And anyways, that night, after the knocks, you just kind of heard something leave. It just kind of left, and we eventually fell asleep and woke up next morning. Now, I'll tell you, my buddy Ian, in the other tent, he slept. You could hear him snoring. He slept through the whole thing. He didn't even hear anything that night, which amazed me. But my buddy Mitch and myself, we heard the whole thing, and it kind of freaked us out a little bit. Next morning we get up, and we're looking around, and we just didn't see anything. It was pretty dry outside. You couldn't find tracks if you wanted to in this area, and there's tons of sticks and stuff laying around. So there wasn't really anything that stuck out to me that I could really pinpoint, okay, it was here and it did this, whatever it was. So stuck with it that whole day we talked about it, and Buddy Ian was kind of laughing. Well, I didn't hear nothing, blah, blah. And so we went on like the 17-mile hike that following day, and we got a little bit lost and turned around. Eventually, we made it back to our camp, and we were just gassed. I mean, my buddy Ian wasn't in the best of shape, and so we were just gassed. They ended up running out of water. I had to give them my water just to make it back down the hill. Anyways, we make it back to camp, and it's the same setup. We're cooking, we're on the fire, we do some more fishing. I think one of us I think my buddy Mitch caught a fish finally. Wasn't nothing to brag about, but make it back to camp, fish, cooked a meal, and my buddy Ian, he plays a little music, and I think he was playing Led Zeppelin or something, not super loud. He brought this little portable boombox thing out there, and he was playing a little music, and we were chatting and whatnot. So we were chatting around the fire and called it a night about the same time, 11, 12 at night. Get in our tents, 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, I start hearing this clanking again, just, same thing. And it's from a distance, but it's getting closer and closer and closer, and it's getting louder. And it stops. My buddy Mitch is awake again. We're like, wow, whatever it is back. And then we start hearing footsteps, but this time it's much closer, and whatever is around us it sounds like it's snapping big sticks, and it definitely thought it was walking and breaking them. The difference this night was my buddy Mitch was hearing something to his left, and I'm hearing something to my right. So we're thinking there's two of whatever this is. He's like, there's something to the left. It's snapping, and I'm listening. I'm like, okay, I'm hearing that. So we're getting a little freaked out. It's walking along this hill and also down lower along the path. And so we're getting freaked out. That happens for a little bit. There's just walking back and forth. We're not hearing any vocals, not hearing any whistles or anything like that. Just nothing. Just everything is, this thing walking around, maybe even breaking branches off trees. I don't know. It sounded rather, at the time I assumed aggressive. It just was stomping around, and possibly two of them. And then it got quiet. Then all of a sudden, the most thunderous wood knocks. I've encountered wood knocks since, and what I'm assuming is wood knocks. And like I said, I'll talk about that in a minute, but you could feel whatever this was hitting a tree. I mean, I have no doubt about that. Was hitting a tree so hard you could feel it in the tent. And that's when my buddy Ian, who's apparently a really deep sleeper, woke up. And he goes, what the hell is that? And it happened like 5 times, but it was bam, whack. I mean, it echoed. You could feel it in your tent. And you then, that you were dealing with something big and powerful. There was no doubt in my mind then that we were dealing with something big and powerful. And it just smacked us on these trees. And it stopped after that. And my buddy Ian's kind of freaking out. And we were all carrying weapons. We were all armed. And he's freaking out. He wanted to come out, blasting. He's freaking out. And so I try and calm him down. And all of a sudden, you hear something coming high up in the trees. Just, hitting the branches, coming down, and then thud. And my buddy Mitch goes, you know what that was, right? And we're like, yeah, that was a freaking rock. Something just threw a rock at our camp. And it landed close to his tent, he was nearest the lake. Didn't hit his tent, landed a few feet away. But I could tell it was a fairly good-sized rock, or projectile, I should say, because I couldn't tell it was a rock for sure, but I was pretty dang sure it was a rock. You could hear it come through the trees, hitting the branches, coming down, and thud right in the muck, close to the lake, right next to my buddy's tent. And at that time, we're like, I didn't know what to think. I was like, okay, this has just gone another level. My buddy Ian's freaking out. He's not a camper. I'll tell you that. He wasn't a camper. He's not a camper. The guy was from Boston. And he's just freaking out. And I'm trying to calm him down. I'm thinking, I need to go to this guy's tent. He's going to shoot somebody. Something's going to happen here. I unzip my tent, and I'm peering around. And right behind a tree, across from our fire on the other side, I'm looking straight across. Our fire's in front of us. And it's low. It's low. But behind this tree, I see a head and a shoulder and a hand, and this thing's weaving back and forth. I see this kind of silhouette of a head, shoulder, and hand, and it's weaving back and forth, bobbing back and forth, side to side. Its hand's not really moving, but the shoulder and head is, and it's almost like playing peekaboo. And I'm not trying to put stuff on my own head, but I swore we locked eyes. You could see a little bit of glisten, and I don't know if it noticed me. I mean, I'll be honest, I tried to unzip my tent rather quietly, but it probably heard me, and it peeled off the tree, kind of pushed off with his arm, and went up the trail, and that was it. It was gone. But I got enough look at it that I was like, I just saw a freaking Sasquatch. It was confirmed. I mean, I was thinking that the whole time that night, given everything we went through, because I've spent many, many nights in the woods, and I've been around, many people, around bears and every other animal, people, and this was just so profound. It was everything I kind of hoped for, and yet not. When you're interested in a subject, you like Sasquatch, you think you want stuff like that to happen, but when you're in the moment, even if I busted out my camera, I probably wouldn't have got anything. I almost guaranteed. But in the moment, you're freaked out. I mean, when something like that happens and you've never experienced it before, now, looking back now, I'd probably take a different approach. I'd be like, oh, I'd bust out my tent now. I just would. But then we were just all freaked out, and I got a buddy next to me that's freaking out. My other buddy Mitch is, he's freaked out, but he's a lot more level-headed. And so I unzipped the tent and peeked, and then I peeled back. I didn't know what this thing was going to do.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, you're right. I mean, everyone always, and I hear it all the time from members of the show and emails. People always they want an encounter, and my thing is be careful what you wish for, because it might just happen. In that situation, do you think that they were being aggressive, or do you think that it was more of, hey, time to wake up, we're bored? I mean, what do you think was going on with that situation?
Wes, that's a great question, and that's the number one question in my head. It's not what was I dealing with. I mean, I won't claim to know what Sasquatch is, but I'm pretty dang sure that was a Sasquatch. My question is just that this was phenomenal for me in a lot of ways, because it happened over 2 nights. This whatever it was, and I still think there's probably 2 and maybe more. I don't know, but at least 2. At least the second night. The first night I'm not sure, but why 2 nights in a row, and why in that location? It's bugged me since 2011, and this happened in August of 2011, and it was a warm night, but August of 2011. So it bugs me that I still try and wrap my head around that. Now, I'll tell you this: my buddy Ian was snoring both nights, and I may have been snoring before I woke up. I do snore occasionally, especially when I'm gassed and tired. I don't know. But I know for a fact my buddy Ian was snoring both nights, and I don't know if that played a part in it, but the fact that he was snoring, and we never screamed or anything. My buddy Mitch and I were whispering when this stuff was going on both nights. Did it hear us? Maybe not. Maybe. I don't know. But the knocks and those footsteps, walking back and forth, they weren't quiet. That weren't stealthy. I think I've been in situations where Sasquatch has been very stealthy, even recently, but they weren't, or it was not stealthy. It was very loud breakings. And it was almost like, okay, I can't wake you up stomping around or rock clanking, whatever, it means, rock clanking, if it's trying to communicate, or just, having a good time knocking 2 rocks together. I don't know. But hitting that tree was one of the things that sticks out in my mind, because there was the sheer power and force that feel in your tent was profound. And then to have the rock come into camp. Okay, so the rock coming into camp was key, because that's telling me, and it could have hit our tent. And by the way, that rock was about the size of a softball. It wasn't small. A little bit smaller than a softball, but a good-sized rock. And it was fairly round, not perfectly round. It's one of the rocks you find on Mount Hood, but it was a good-sized rock, and that's why I could hear it come through the trees. That rock coming to camp, it's a couple of things. It's either trying to scare you out of there, wake you, or hey, Pete, hello, we're here. So there's, there's only a couple of things why it would do that. Curiosity is trying to see, wants you to come out of the tent. We were cooking some good food. We were acting like campers, having a good time. My buddy, like I said, Ian was playing a little bit of music. Not the first night though, so the music was not a part of the first night. Only the second night. But in my head, I'm thinking there's got to be a reason they came back 2 nights in a row. So originally, I thought, well, we camped at the easiest access to water around this whole lake. You can get to the water, but you have to go through a bunch of bushes and stuff. We were probably camping at the most easily accessible point to the water. Now, I've since kind of ruled that out. I just don't think that was the thing. I think they were in the area that time of year, and subsequently I've done a lot of research and compiled some data on that time of year and the reports and some of the reports out of the area. Haven't done research now, blowing my mind. Some amazing reports out of that area. But honestly, Wes, I can't tell you why. It's one of those things that eats at me daily. I'm still trying to get the answers on that. I have a lot of hypotheses, but when it boils down to, I just don't know. I just know that we had this thing around us 2 nights, if not multiple things around those 2 nights, and it was pretty harrowing. I did want to mention, though, real quick, now, these tree knocks, okay? I heard what I sound like rock clanking come down the hill. A lot of people talk about wood on wood, the wood knocks. I don't know. I am a big proponent of Sasquatch making wood knocks from its own body, whether it's clapping its hands, popping its mouth. But the fact that it reverberated through our tents and you could hear the echo and stuff, it definitely was hitting a tree, no doubt about it. Now, was it hitting a tree with a rock, or was it hitting a tree with another limb? I venture to say, and almost guarantee, he was hitting it with a rock. And I say that because the sheer force of it would have to be one heck of a limb to hit that tree. Now, a rock, why would it drop the rock? If it's rock clanking coming down there, why would it drop the rock? It wouldn't. It would probably keep it. In fact, the rock came into our camp. It was probably hitting the tree with a rock. And so that stood out to me, and that's the one thing that I would bet on, that the rock that came into camp was probably the rock it was hitting the tree with.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if you heard Friday's show or not, but the gentleman I had on, he was talking about how it actually grabbed a deer, broke its neck, and carried it off. It never actually even set the deer down. It did it all, snapped the deer's neck, and started walking off with it. And what he saw, he said it had its hand open, and it slammed it against a tree. He said the noise that made, it would be like if someone took a Louisville Slugger and just pounded a tree as hard as they could. He could almost feel the vibration from the saying. And I said, well, did it have a rock in its hand? Did it have a... And he goes, no, it was like open palm, and it hit this tree so hard. And he said it sounded like a wood knock. It sounded like what you would hear, in other places. And then I've had witnesses on that said they did have rocks in their hands, and they were banging on trees. And so it's kind of a weird behavior, It's, why do they do that? Is it kind of alerting? The rock clacking fascinates me. I rarely get reports of them doing that, but I do get reports of that. And it just makes you wonder, is it a warning to the rest of them? Like, hey, I'm going in to check things out, or, you know what I mean? It's just a real odd behavior for them to do. Oh, yeah, it is. I will say that some non-human primates do similar things. Communication, and sometimes just out of boredom, they'll hit a tree. And in fact, there was a recent video of, give me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was chimpanzees running up and throwing rocks at a tree. And they would pick up the same rock, and days later would come back and pick up the same rock and hit the tree. Or they'd come up and slap it. And they don't really know why, but they would do it. And they would scurry off. They just hit the tree and scurry off. So why does Sasquatch possibly do this? I don't know, but it is intriguing, and I do believe that they make a lot of the noises that we think Sasquatch makes, or we call tree knocks, are actually coming mechanically. They're coming from themselves, whether it's a palm hitting the tree or they're hitting their chest or a mouth pop. I think that's a huge possibility, and I know you've had a lot of witnesses on your show recollect some of that stuff. I just think that, and not that they don't hit a tree with a limb, but if you think about a rock, the multiple uses for a rock, if you carry it around, it's small, you can hit a tree with it, you can stun your prey, you can do, for some, it could even be a toy, it's just something of interest. So there's a lot of reasons that a rock makes sense to me, that a Sasquatch would utilize a rock for a multitude of reasons. It stands out in my head in my encounter specifically, and many of the reports that I've taken in. And, of course, to touch upon briefly, the Lynn Project came across a possible bedding nesting area, and we're not saying it's happening. But one of the interesting things to note about that nesting area, that bedding area, was there was two rocks found at one of the bedding areas, and they had scuff marks on them, and they weren't softball size; they were a bit smaller. They could fit in your palm, but they had scuff marks on them, and they were at the point, almost like whatever was guarding possibly this nest, or I'm just theorizing. It's all hypothetical. But
where these rocks were placed, you could hit these rocks and you could hear it cross the ravine to the other side of the hill, the other, and it's very steep. But you could hear, it's that, so I think rocks play a huge part, and it's harder to break a rock than it is a limb. If you get the wrong limb and hit a tree, it's going to break off.
No, you're absolutely right. And I'd love to see those bedding areas that you guys came across. I had a guy in Texas. I wish I would ask him to go back and take pictures of it. But it was a witness that he was walking through the Sam Houston National Forest in this one area. He was actually hunting, and he kind of went off trail. And as he was going off trail, he started walking up upon what he thought was a bear. And he was kind of surprised to see it because there's not a ton of bears down there. And he said that he stepped on a twig or he stepped on something, and in a split second, this thing popped up on two legs. And that's when he thought, oh, crap, it's a chimpanzee. But then that didn't really make sense either because it didn't look like a chimpanzee. It was different. It was something different. And he said this thing was about 7.5, maybe 8 feet tall. And he said they made eye contact, and then it took off running. As he walked up to the area where it was laying down, he said it kind of reminded him of like a nest. And I asked him, I said, what do you mean nest? And he goes, it was like pine needles, and it was stuff that was interwoven together, and it just looked like a really comfortable bed that he goes, I guess something you'd see like on National Geographic. It was in the middle. He almost stumbled. He almost literally tripped over this thing as he's walking up on it. And so I'd love to see those nests that you guys found. I wonder if it's anything like that the witness I was speaking with.
It sounds similar in some ways. I don't know where this witness is located or how exactly he came across it. I'll tell you that the nests that were discovered are pretty remote and very, very difficult to get to. You wouldn't see them. You couldn't see them from the sky. You couldn't use a drone to see them. You couldn't see them from a plane. It's very thick, surrounded by huckleberry, and you wouldn't know you were walking across these nests until you're right up on them. And then once you're there, it's like a bulldozer's been through there in a lot of ways. Everything snapped off in a 360 area. I mean, everything snapped off. And for those of you who know huckleberry, I couldn't snap half of those. I mean, I couldn't. Near impossible, the thickness. I could snap a few, the smaller ones, not the thicker ones. And the nests, they weren't woven together, but they were very, very well made, and they were huge. Some smaller, some big.
Yeah, and that's kind of when I say woven together, I mean, he said it was materials that wasn't in that area. It was materials that were almost like brought in. And he said they look kind of comfortable. He goes, man, if I was stuck in the woods, he goes, I'd probably lay down in it, and it'd be a nice little bed to lay down on. But he actually caught this thing laying down. Some people say, well, they they live underground, they live in caves, they live, this and that. But it was just interesting to hear this guy say, man, I almost, literally a couple more feet, I would have tripped over this thing. It was a nest. It was like pine needles, and it had obviously made this bed. It wasn't natural, I guess is what I'm trying to say, by any means.
Yeah. And that's a good point is, I think if Sasquatch is indeed in a lot of states, which I believe it is in many states, you're not going to have huckleberry or pine. They're going to utilize what they have. I know in Alaska there was some very similar nests found years ago, and they were made out of pine bark right from the tree. Obviously we don't know if Sasquatch made them, but the nests that I saw in these pictures were very similar to the nests we found in construction and in size and girth and everything else. You get different, you just don't know how they utilize, if indeed these are Sasquatch beds, nests that have been found and that we've come across, you don't know the reason behind, do you have an individual making one nest? I mean, the nest area that we discovered, there's multiple nests and on multiple ridges, okay? And so you don't know the reason behind them. Is this, and hypothetically speaking, of course, but saying that Sasquatch, is this a birthing area? Is this used seasonally? Is this a one-time thing? Which I highly do not think so, based on the how thick these nests are. I mean, they're so thick. and very comfy. As you mentioned earlier with your past guests, they look comfy. These nests are very comfy. I've laid in one, very comfy, but they're so thick, and the surrounding area is everything's broken off. It wouldn't make sense for it to be a one-time thing like gorillas do. They'll make a nest and they'll use it one time and that's it. They'll never use it again. These seem to be have been used either for a period of time or over a period of time where they've come back. And are they a birthing area? Is it an area they just rested down? Because what's fascinating is they overlook a stream, slightly bigger than a stream. And this stream gets a lot of salmon seasonally. A lot, stacked up, okay? So is this an area where they can hunker down in where no people are going to get to them, and they're very well protected because you're not coming in through the top without being noticed. There's no freaking way. In fact, if you come up from the base, from the ravine area, it's so steep, it's crazy, and it's a pain in the butt. They're gonna hear you no matter how you come in, and have multiple escape routes. But they have huckleberry to munch on. They have other plants in the area, pine and whatnot, and then they have this salmon down, which when I was down at the ravine checking this out, and I wasn't there during the heavy salmon run, there was carcasses freaking everywhere. Everywhere. So there's a lot of reasons that a lot of things that stand out in my mind as to why, if it was Sasquatches that made these nests, why they would be there, protected. You can see, things coming. You can hear things coming, and you got plentiful amounts of food. And these, and you got this formation of nests. And I'll say formation because, personally to me, they're strategically placed. We've had biologists, bear biologists biologists and bear experts up in this area, and they've never seen anything like this. Derek Randall and James Millian and many of the others, John Pickering, that have seen us, guys that have lived in Washington their whole lives. They're hunters. In fact, Ridgewalkers is Derek Randall's and James Millian's one of their companies, and they take people on guided hunting trips. They've been all around, and they've never come across anything like this. And the biologists that have looked at this have never seen like this. And the closest thing I can find via internet and all my research is a gorilla nest. That's the closest thing. Go online, look at a gorilla nest. A lot of them you're going to see like the green stuff. This is, I wasn't present when it was green. When Derek Randall's and them came, were brought to these nests, there was a little bit of green in them. The other nests that we subsequently have found are older. There's no green around them, but everything's the same. Everything's the same thing. Things snapped off. A lot of people will be amazed to know that otters make nests, and otters are in these areas, but these don't fit otter nests. They don't fit some of your birds. They don't fit a bear, elk. I've never come across anything that would snap these huckleberry branches like they've been snapped. These nests are profound to me. They really stand out to me as an amazing thing. I can't get it out of my head because if it is Sasquatch, it's an amazing find. If it's not Sasquatch, it's an amazing find because it's not been found. Nothing like this has been seen in North America. So even if it's not Sasquatch, it's something unique that's not been seen here in North America. So either way, we're going to see it through the end and try and figure out what's doing this. It's one of those things that we're talking about at the beginning of the show. It's a tedious process. Now, one other tidbit is that there has been hair found from these nests, and they have come back unknown, but they have matched possible other Sasquatch hairs found in other areas. So that to me is very compelling and interesting, and it gives a little more validation that we're dealing with something very unique and hopefully Sasquatch.
That is interesting. How big would you say a nest is? Just a rough figure, width and length.
Well, I'll tell you what. My buddy James Millian, I think he's about 6'3", and he's a big dude. He laid in it, and he looked like a child. So not all the nests. I say they vary in size. Some of these nests range in size from about 8 feet and bigger to much smaller. And a couple of nests are unfinished. And, the funny thing was, and Derek pointed this out to me, was there was a smaller nest kind of in a bush, okay? And it was like in the beginning stages. And then you also would find like snapped off stuff, like kind of tossed to the side in the bushes, like just, a whole bunch of pile of stuff, like something was utilized, picking, snapped stuff off, laid it down and was building a nest, or just got tired and dropped it. I don't know. But the interesting thing about that nest that was in the bush was gorillas, the juveniles will mimic what the mother gorilla will do. They'll try and copy and build their own nest, just as a practice. And it just stood out to me like it kind of looked like that, like something was a practice nest, not where a nest should be. So that stood out to me. And there is another. Now these are multiple nesting areas or bedding areas. They're not just in one little spot. They span out quite a ways along these ridges. There's one nest in the tree. I can't rule out an eagle nest, but this thing is freaking huge, and it's way up in the tree. It's a way up there, okay, in the pine tree. And the interesting thing about it is, it's huge for one. And eagles do build big nests and whatnot. But the interesting thing is, we've been viewing this nest for months and months and months, and it's not changed color. It's dark. Okay, if you ever seen an eagle's nest or a large bird of prey's nest, they'll get foliage and stuff, and it'll be it'll be green at first, and then it'll die, and it'll turn like a gray or dark color, or lighter color. This nest in the tree, it's huge, and it doesn't look like a bird's nest. It looks like a big clump of something up in the tree. But the thing is, it's never changed color. It's over the months, it's never changed color. And James Millian, who's a very smart guy, and avid hunter, and it just knows his wildlife, and also very skeptical. Let me tell you, he's never had an encounter. He's a part of the Lynn Project, an intricate part of the Lynn Project. Never had his own encounter. He's had some crazy experiences. That's a whole nother show. But he pointed out to me, he's like, that's never changed color. It's almost as if something flipped over a branch or twisted a branch and laid it flat and then built something around it, because that it's still living. Like you twist a branch over, it won't necessarily die, but it's never changed color. It's that dark green, dark black color. Eventually, maybe one of these days, we may go in there and dissect the nest and really do some research on the nest. Right now, we're kind of leaving them alone and whatnot. But eventually, I'm probably going to climb that tree and check out that nest. But it'd be it'd be pretty hairy. It's up there.
Yeah, no kidding. And it's a great find. Have you guys thought about setting up shop near those nests, like off the ridgeline, more towards the river, and just hanging out for a couple days to see if anything happens?
We have, and some of the plans maybe down the road. Really, if this is a bedding or nesting area, if it is, I would have to assume that we not living out there and as humans, we're going to be spotted and seen right away and smelled and heard. Derek and them are, like I said, phenomenal hunters, and could be ninjas of the force in a lot of aspects. To match a Sasquatch, if you're building, well, first of all, it'd be very hard to see anything coming in and out of this nesting or bedding areas. It's just that thick. We do have game cams up in these areas, but it'd be very difficult to see, even from the other side of the ravine. It'd be very difficult to see anything coming in and out of there. Just like anything else, you'd have to be super lucky to see anything. But it is an idea we've tossed around, and down the road, if we're not having any via the game cams and some of the other stuff we got going on, we don't have anything. We'll probably go in there and do stuff like that and see what happens. But it doesn't seem like, I'll be honest with you, it doesn't seem like any activities happening in there in months. But this hasn't been going on for a year or even 2 years. So we're looking at the seasons and kind of looking at the salmon runs and some of the other things to get a feel and just kind of leave the area alone, in a lot of ways. I guarantee we haven't even found all the nesting areas. There's more out there, guaranteed. In the short time we've been out there, we found more. I think we're up to about 14. So given time, some of these nests deteriorate and stuff, so you don't even know what you're exactly looking at. Some of them are pristine, and some are just, weather and everything else kind of destroying. So you don't know exactly if that's a nest or not, other than the real pristine ones. And things grow back. The growth grows back and covers them. So, we could probably find multiple nests around some of the other nests. Who knows?
I'd love to go with you guys sometime and actually take a look around and see. I just think it'd be cool to see it. I've heard about it From a very few witnesses. I mean, I've heard of the nesting thing from, there was 2 in Texas and I think 1 in Arkansas, where people were talking about these nests they found. And like I said, that one guy in Texas in the Sam Houston, he actually caught a Sasquatch sleeping in it. So it's very fascinating, and makes sense that they'd put it in an area where there's multiple escape routes. It's a pain in the butt to get to. Lots of food around, and if it is a birthing area, or what researchers call a birthing area, might be kind of a dangerous area to go into.
Yeah, you just don't know. You just don't know. And I'm not claiming that it is a birthing area, but it's an idea. It could be just an area that, if it is Sasquatch, that it's an area that they pass through or stay in, from time to time. There's obviously multiple nests in different stages. The original nest still had green in them, so there was something there, and that's where some of the hair was found that came back unknown, and definitely matched some of the other samples out there of possible Sasquatch hair. One of these days, Wes, maybe we'll get you up there. I'll be honest with you, it's only been a select few, a lucky few that have been up to these nesting areas, these bedding areas. So not even all of the, in fact, many Olympic Project members have not been up there yet. We did have Cliff Barrickman up there. He's a good friend of ours, and so we had him up there and to view him, and he was very much intrigued, and we took a lot of measurements and stuff. And there's so much work to be done, but it's tedious because you don't want to rush into something and go gung ho. You want to look at all the avenues, and maybe you're wrong and maybe you're right, but you want to look at all the avenues as to what this could be and what's coming in out of there, and should you go in, should you not go in. And you got to look at life in general. A lot of us have day jobs, and so it's a slow, tedious process. But the most intriguing thing I've ever seen, and I found impressions and tracks, and I've seen some cool stuff, and been around some crazy stuff that's happened. But these nests just blow my mind, and especially hearing that from biologists and other people that are experts, and many other people involved, I'm sure that will come out much later, that it's very interesting. But one day, definitely hope to get you out there, because I think you'd be very, very intrigued and fascinated by these nests.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd love to see it. And I'm really looking forward to this weekend, man, hanging out. I know we hung out at Beachfoot, man. I laughed so much, had such a great time. And I can't wait to see you again up there. And I'm really looking forward to it, man.
Really looking forward to having you up there, Wes. And I've wanted you up there for a while. I know you're a busy guy. And I'm really stoked that you managed to make a little time to make it up there. Because the Olympic Project, the way we operate, it's research with a purpose. And I like to say Bigfoot without the bullcrap. That's just my own personal thing. But the research without a purpose is our motto. And we have some of the best people, in my opinion, working on multitudes of stuff and daily. And we very much collaborate with other groups and witnesses and stuff. We're not so closed-doored that, it's okay, it's OP and everybody else can buzz off. No, very much we collaborate with multiple groups and individuals, a lot of individuals, and scientific individuals and non-scientific individuals. And some of the people, the cool thing is some of the people that have actually come on these expeditions with us have actually later on become OP members because of their backgrounds or knowledge or their enthusiasm. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but my first trip up there, I wasn't an OP member. I paid to come to one of these expeditions, and I was blown away. And it was phenomenal. I learned a lot, and I got to meet, my resources exploded. And it was just very welcoming. So, we have, Derek Randalls, of course, and James Millian, David Ellis, who's, an audio geek, an audio extraordinaire. His library of audio recordings are amazing, and his visual analysis is phenomenal. It's truly groundbreaking. He's not the only one doing it, but his library and his approach, I can't say enough about David Ellis. And, we got Tom Baker, who's our data man, and he really is one of the pillars to what we do. And his data analysis and collection is phenomenal. He's the guy that puts our graphs together, a guy that works for Amazon. He's a major player in Amazon. I mean, this guy is phenomenal. So that's truly extraordinary. And we have Matthew Jones, who's like our map guy, our topography guy. He goes out there and he knows areas like the back of his hand. We have Cindy Dawson, that that is a hair analysis person. She's out of Vancouver Island, British Columbia, who many of your listeners probably know who I'm talking about, who had a freaking crazy encounter in Vancouver. Yeah. But she's our hair analysis person, and we have so many members I can mention, Chuck Madsen, Shelley Covington, Larry Turner, Gunnar Monson, Jess Southern, Barb Oliveira, Cindy Cadell, and many of these people have degrees in archaeology and different sciences. Some are just really good trackers and stuff. So we have such a plethora of people, many of them with their own experiences and some not. We have skeptics and seekers of truth, and those that are just kind of, we call knowers, that have had this, a Sasquatch encounter. So the Limb Project is very unique in a lot of ways. And I think, Wes, having you up there, you're going to, you know a lot of these people already, but having you up there at the Limb Project and seeing the area and, talking to some of these people and just getting out in the field, I think you're going to have a blast. I think you're going to enjoy talking to some of these people. And I hope, Wes, you take something away from it.
Oh, I'm sure I will. I'm sure I'll take away a lot from it. And I'm really excited about it. Like I said, I need a vacation for the most part, but it's fun to get away and actually get out. I've been trying to get out more in the woods, go back to what you love doing, getting back out there and sometimes sitting behind, I know everyone hears a podcast and it's not as sexy as everyone thinks. You're behind a computer screen, you're talking to people. I love talking to people, but it's nice to get out and be in those situations like Beachfoot. I loved Beachfoot and so I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you so much for the invite. Shane Corson from Monster X every Sunday night, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, along with Gunnar. Great show. You can catch it on iTunes. You can go to Monster X Radio on Facebook. I also want to mention the Olympic Project, olympicproject.com. Thanks so much, Shane. I appreciate you coming on the show, man, and I'll see you later today. I got to finish packing, but thanks so much for coming on, man.
Absolutely, man. It's a blast, and I really appreciate it, man. I'm really looking forward to being out with you in the field and just enjoying your company up at the Olympic Project.
And that's it for tonight, everyone. Remember, if you've had an encounter, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. I will see you guys back on Sunday. Have a good night, everyone.